Mark, big question here for you to start things off. Just want to know that if I threw a party and all we do is play Monopoly, would you come?
Sure that the people
Mm-hmm.
who do still enjoy this program will not know what we're talking about, but that's okay. You
That's
know,
fine.
it's
That's fine. That's
yeah,
that's why we're going to talk about what we're talking about today, Mark, because this is at least one from this end of the table that we have thoroughly enjoyed. And if you have not seen it, well, it's free. Um, and now you don't have an excuse anymore.
exactly. Sometimes there's a property or something that we've watched, and you either need to have a subscription or, in some cases, the actual
Yeah, the
DVD,
hard
Blu-ray
copy.
itself. Yeah,
hmm
which kind of sucks because I mean,
hmm
physical media outside of video games these days is almost unheard of. But
hmm
in this case, this is one of those films, Joe, that was kind of beaten into us at the Academy, and it doesn't really fall into any of the subject matter that we would normally cover. Like this is purely our own fan service in a way because I know we were both introduced to it in college. We were forced to watch
hmm
it as part of our journalism studies, Joe. It is
Yes.
2003's Shattered Glass, Joe, what was the first thing that went through your head when your professor made you watch this?
Yay, a movie. I think is probably where I was because it's still, I don't think it matters what level of school you're at. Your teacher throws on a movie, you know it's just a good day because you may or may not have to actually pay attention. So, I mean, rarely, especially when it's a feature film, right? Because no one's testing you. Like, this is not going to show up in 2003's Shattered Glass starring Hayden Christensen. What happened after he cooked a piece? Or he found out he cooked a piece for even his older editor. That doesn't show up anywhere. Even like because this is obviously this is a big ethics movie, and so you're just excited that you get to watch a movie or zone out. I personally did not zone out as I thoroughly enjoyed this movie when it came on.
I didn't zone out at all either. Like the types of films you get to watch in college are usually either some indie film that is so far off the rails that there's no one in
hmm
that class that knows it outside of the professor. And if it's not that, then it's usually maybe a 5 minute film that the students made that then has about 8 minutes of bloopers afterward, and I don't need to see that. So
No.
this was a very welcome thing to have a film with actual people in it that I
hmm
recognized. But yeah, first impressions of this when I saw Hayden Christensen on it, I went, man, I have not had decent experiences with him up to this point in my life. Uh, so I didn't really know what to think. Granted, I saw it in
hmm
right around 2007, 2008. I think that's right around the same time you did, isn't it?
Oh yeah. It's definitely that time. It's the Whitewater years, so that's when I checked it out. And I mean, like you said, like the expectation and the bar was not high. You were fully expecting him to just complain about sand for half of the movie, which thankfully doesn't happen.
No, but I am looking forward to explaining how
hmm
his, what some people might say, like peculiar approach to acting kind of yields in this one. But
hmm
to be honest with you, the first thing I think about was Shattered Glass, which is not something I learned right away. This is something that I carried an irregular amount of fandom for in the years after college. So
hmm
it was one of those DVDs where it's like I walked into pre-played and picked it up because for some reason they had it. It was like $1.99. It's
hmm
it's one of those cases where like they're laughing at you, going, "Why are you buying that?" It's just could have been sitting over there. No one's even
Yeah,
touched it. You're the first one.
yeah, yeah. We kind of put it there as a joke.
Yeah.
We didn't think anyone would actually buy it. We thought we'd even put something on there that said we'd pay you for it, and we'd
Oh,
see, and we didn't think anyone would take it.
I, what's crazy to me is that I don't have a whole lot of like background knowledge of this at the time. Back in 2007, 2008, I
hmm
hadn't even really thought about this scandal that it focuses on, which is basically it was from a 1998. Basically a fraudulent journalism case that took over the New Republic magazine, and for journalism students, this is something they taught us about. This is in our text, Joe, the sacred texts. They
Yes.
talked about this case quite a bit,
Hmm.
and so suddenly, Joe, there's a guy before us though who was also a previous journalism student who decided to start filmmaking by the name of Billy Ray, who is not to be confused as like the brother of like Sugar Ray. They're not related. Honest
Nor did
mistake.
this man ever sing about his achy breaky heart. Just in case that's the direction you were going with this. Not you, Mark. Mark wasn't going down that road. But the listeners never know. That's where I went when I saw the
Not,
name. I'm like, there's no way he's into movies. No way.
not, not. I wasn't planning on it, but I mean, I am still kind of surprised by how Billy Ray has managed to stay under the radar for so long because he's behind the writing teams of the Hunger Games adaptations, Captain Phillips, the Richard Jewell film that came out a couple of years ago, and he does a really good job with making a technical movie. The reason why I say this, Joe, is because when I was watching Shattered Glass in the classroom, I noticed right away that there are some things about filmmaking that Billy Ray paid really close attention to. And those are things like making sure that when you do a transition or you have characters speaking to each other, that their head movements match from shot to shot. The mouths are moving because they're actually saying the dialogue that they meant to. And it's not stitched together kinds of things.
Yeah.
That kind of technical attention is paid throughout this entire film, which makes it really unique because you see that sloppy kind of work all the time now.
Oh, yeah. And I'd like to call attention to his decision for reshoots for this movie, and which I know in the modern day basically means that you're going to get a mustache CGI'd off and it's going to be a laughingstock. But, like, when he decided to make the reshoots for this movie, there were complaints about it then, too, because, that's always going to put you over budget because now you're spending more time, more money. But when you first enter this movie, it's actually through a high school, I believe. It's where Stephen Glass went to high school, and everything that is done in that high school is a reshoot. And I think it's a brilliant move because this is one of those things where sometimes a filmmaker won't approach a movie because they think the concept won't work, and then they make sure to do something to ground it. Like the reason you even got like the original Superman in the '70s to work is because they had to make it real. If you just made a comic book movie in the '70s, feel like a comic book, it wouldn't have worked back then. And in this one, he realized that if you were to make basically a movie that felt like a technical journalism piece, you're gonna have maybe a cult following at best. It's probably not gonna work. So you've got to do something else that brings a character out of what you have here. Because while this is based on a true story, obviously I think that the events of Stephen Glass going into this old high school of his and trying to talk to children, and when you get to the end of the movie to see the grand reveal of what he's doing at the high school, the very first question needs to be is how the hell did he get in the high school?
Well, hey, keep in mind that took place in the '90s. So back then, I mean, you could just walk right on in, pretend like you
Yeah,
belonged there. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
you puke, they put down the pink sawdust, and everything is business as usual.
Everything's fine. I'm sure the worst they even thought back in the '90s was like, hey, we left a door unlocked. I better go get that. Nah, don't worry. What's the worst going to happen? Stephen Glass is going to come in? Not a big deal. Not a big deal.
Well, to zip through some of the quote-unquote technical information of this film, it did actually slip into development hell, as you kind of alluded to for a moment there, where for like 2 years it just kind of sat not doing anything. And, Billy Ray, who came up with the concept for adapting this, he was really passionate about doing it. He was a really big fan of the original Watergate journalists who he references in the very beginning of the film, Bob Woodward and Carl Bernstein. And so you can tell there's a personal flavor to what he's doing here. Once you start to read into what he did to get this movie made, I mean he really made sure they nailed the information. They made sure to involve all of the journalists that were involved in it originally, who were I hate to say surviving because at that point in time they all were. And then later, once the film was nearing completion, unfortunately, one of them would pass away in the Iraq War. But regardless, I can't say it enough. I know I'm front-loading this a ton, but Billy Ray truly helped get this thing across the line. And I do want to give a tip to the cap, to him for this, because you see films that they get these massive budgets. They do not get anywhere near to being just as careful, meticulously planned, and detailed as this one chose to be. So I'm sorry. I really gotta give it to him. He did a
Yeah.
fantastic job.
Oh, hats off. And we would like to point out that if you do know a good deal about the Stephen Glass story, that this movie was inspired by the Vanity Fair piece by H.G. Bissinger, and not Stephen Glass's own book, The Fabulist, which he recants and recalls like the details of his early life that led to this, which when you read reviews on that, it's even more kind of telling of Stephen Glass as a person and why he did this, because nowhere in that book does he really apologize for what he did. He also kind of alludes to that he was always really good at lying from a young age, which he even then points out for some reason he wouldn't want to go into writing fiction, that journalism was the thing for him. It's like, wait, so you're defending you're defending the decision to go into nonfiction and pump out fiction after fiction. And like it's a fucking ball of worms, man. It is nuts.
Well, it's like I said. Once you start to dig into this story, I mean, the real world story of it is compelling enough on its own. And when Billy Ray talks about how he had concerns over making this feel like too much just writing the piece, because I wrote for the college newspaper, the UW Whitewater, the Royal Purple newspaper. Joe, go Warhawks.
Yeah.
I wrote for that newspaper for about 2 years, and yeah, writing this stuff was not fun. There's no reason to record that. There's no reason to live stream it. No one's going to get interested watching that. And so, to your point, doing the flashbacks with the school helps you kind of frame things a lot more than just showing them doing this stuff. And so it is definitely entertaining to a point where modern day scandals, when they're covered in movies, they're so triumphantly blunt when they're trying to make these things like seem hard hitting.
Yeah.
Whereas with this movie, it does obviously take all of the source material and all the testimony that people gave, but they still managed to kind of give it a bit of a slow burn. And the best part about it is it's not, like I said, blunt before. It's not bluntly presented to you in a way where you feel like you're watching a documentary. And that's how some of these things can go. Which, man, I can't believe we are finally getting around to this after 5 years of doing this stuff, man. It's surreal to me.
Yeah, it's just one of those things, man. Because like I'm not gonna say like we've been focusing on the greatest hits collection over the years. This is this particular episode is a passion project of the passion project. We fully were aware of what we're doing here. So when you look at this movie, and I like that we've been talking about how that they do know they have to make it not just a documentary. If you were to do Ken Burns, Stephen Glass, I don't know how many people would have tuned in for that, as you have this slow crawl, and you've got his very calming voice describing the events of Stephen Glass walking into a convention center and scoping it out and making the decision that he was going to lie about something, and didn't even happen to look at the office hours on the outside of it, or the business hours outside of it, to make sure he wasn't really fucking up when he was lying. No. They decide to, again, make it dramatic. And you do that by getting or actors who are going to make everything here very believable, which again, some people will then say, why did you pick Hayden Christensen? And this is actually one of those cases that I would fully defend Hayden Christensen on, because he really, really plays this character well. Now, by play it well, I've never watched an interview with Stephen Glass. I have not seen news things with him. My knowledge of Stephen Glass is literally pictures of him and the Vanity Fair article and what I was told by college professors. But when I say Hayden Christensen makes it believable, it is because you are looking at someone who's playing this character who is just so deathly afraid of not getting caught, but not being liked. And it gives you something to kind of hang on to for the character, right? Something you can relate to. He is who we spend a majority of the movie with. So the idea of like wanting to be accepted, wanting to be with your friends at work, with your friends anywhere, and be believed, you can cling on to and you can relate with. However, hopefully that's where the relationship stops, because
Yeah.
Christensen does a great job of letting you understand why he does it, but not defend it. And that's, I think, a very important distinction that he does very well in this movie.
Well, if you're not aware of the Stephen Glass story at all, the way that the movie begins to build this out is that, yeah, you eventually figure out what the deceptions were that Glass kind of inputs to be able to kind of build this I don't know if you want to call it like a vacuum of how he would create these things, right? Like you get little pieces of how he could do it. But what they're very clear in doing is painting him to be the false hero that you're not really quite aware of. You don't really fully see it. And Hayden Christensen, to his, he's got plenty of faults, don't get me wrong, but when it came to this film, the way that he portrays Stephen Glass, like you mentioned, he wants to be liked, but the efforts to be liked are so outward that I could see how like an office environment would soak that up, because I was a young kid in an office at one point in time. I remember how hard it is to get the love of your peers and all that, and so I have fought that same battle before, and so I could immediately latch onto that and go, I could see why a young kid would use charisma to try and get ahead, and it works. It works for the people around him. But what I think is really important here is that Hayden Christensen, yeah, he does a fantastic job, but he is also surrounded by some pretty fantastic talent in this film.
Oh, yes.
Peter Sarsgaard as Chuck Lane, who becomes he's at one point a writer, he's a peer writer next to him, ends up becoming the editor of the New Republic. Chloe Sevigny, who, some people have some interesting things to say about Chloe because she was in a film where there was some unsimulated acts that occurred.
Oh.
So her career kind of went interesting places after this, but far less tumultuous is Melanie Linsky, who has appeared in a ton of things recently, but she's also been acting for a very long time. But there are a couple other MVPs I'd like to call out in this film, Joe. One would be the always lovely Rosario Dawson, who in the early 2000s, you want to talk about slaying. Rosario Dawson, man, she was like she had coverage like Charles Woodson back then. I mean, she was everywhere, and I've never been upset with a performance from her, even though she has a very small part in this one.
She does, and it may have been bigger had she not had to go to the dentist like the day
Correct.
of casting. She may have been put somewhere else.
Which I got to say, my wife disagrees with this, but Steve Zahn, who once again is a champion of like the late 90s, early 2000s.
Yep.
I mean, Steve Zahn slots right in here. He's not reliant to be like a comedy relief, which so many other films would do with him. Man, his investigative tick, for his character of Adam Penneberg, got to say it was so well done, and he doesn't get enough kudos. He really doesn't. But yeah.
No, it's one of those cases where I feel like when you take an actor kind of out of the box that you kind of place them in because they did that one thing incredibly well the first time you really get to see them, and you're kind of hoping that happens again. So when they step out of it, it just kind of doesn't get traction, right? I mean, I'll always kind of point out one that I think was kind of a flop for Will Ferrell was Stranger Than Fiction. And it was it was a very untraditional Will Ferrell movie, and I absolutely loved it. He has I feel like he has one Will Ferrell-esque moment in the entire movie, when he hears the voice that only he can hear tell him that he's going to die soon. He has a quick react to it, and I think it's the same here for Steve Zahn, except he never has, trying to think, whoa, this is making me so mad that I'm forgetting the name of the movie because another friend, a roommate, and I loved it. It was the one where he was trying to do a documentary film on Bigfoot. Strange Wilderness, maybe?
That sounds right. Yeah,
That sounds right, yeah.
I think you've heard that. Yeah.
Yep, he was in that. He was in, oh my God, what's the one with, oh my God, the Strange Wilderness was there. It's the one where friend is dating a girl that no one likes, and it's he and Jack Black are the two friends, and it's
God. Oh,
Jim
man.
from American Pie. Well,
I know the
his
movie.
name.
I know.
Yeah,
I've seen
isn't
it.
it?
I've seen
It's
it.
frustrating. It is so
can't remember.
frustrating right now. Yep.
The
And
one that
it's-
I always
it ca-
remembered for him was That Thing You Do, when he's in the Tom Hanks Beatles wannabe band, but I mean he's kind of a sleeper guy for me. He's a sleeper performance in a lot of movies.
Sorry, Saving Silverman. It
Yes.
just came back.
There you
Saving
go.
Silverman. That's what it was. Here we go. All right, sorry.
Yeah.
Keep
Yep.
on going, sir.
Yeah. But hey, to your point about people who you get to know for one thing, Hank Azaria, who obviously is a Simpsons legendary voice actor. A lot of people have heard him, may not recognize him. The character of Mo Sizlak and the Chief Wiggum and all these other legendary characters in The Simpsons. When you see his physical form, sometimes you're taken aback by him.
You're miss. Mm-hmm.
Dude, he doesn't miss. He doesn't miss.
No,
I mean,
he's great.
yeah.
I don't like this. I don't know if you ever watched Brockmire when it was on. I loved Brockmire. Yeah, great freaking show. And just that great concept of he's an American broadcaster who used to be well known and then loses it when his wife left him and he just gets drunk while broadcasting a game and his career just tanks after that. Love that show.
Oh yeah, yes. Well, and that's what I love about this. You've got several actors in this who get known for a certain kind of persona, and they get to shine in a way that you're not used to seeing them. Part of that dynamic is, of course, how these characters have to interact with each other as they weave in and out of each other's lives. Because Hank Azaria plays Michael Kelly, who in the beginning of the movie is he's the editor of the New Republic, and what's important to pay attention to, because this is, I think, a testament to Billy Ray. It's a testament to the writers. As Hayden Christensen, as Stephen Glass, is recounting his tale about working for the New Republic, he immediately gives you a reason not to trust him, because he forgets the fact that Michael Kelly was his editor when he first starts telling the story. And so right away, and I didn't realize this the first time I watched the movie, Joe. This is repeated viewings here, but immediately you're like going, how could a person
Forget that.
it has to be detail oriented, has to get his facts straight, writes for a national magazine? How on earth could he forget a detail that big immediately?
Yeah.
It's like the first thing he's telling you about, and so right away I was like, okay, all right. Something's wrong here, because like I said, I didn't know the Stephen Glass story that well when I first started watching it, but yeah, in hindsight, looking at it now, it's like, okay, right away the deception begins, and Joe, to kind of skip around for a minute because I don't want to give once again we're not going to do like a full synopsis here, but right away what happens is Michael Kelly gets called on an article that Glass writes, and it's about the CPAC conference where he's observing this like almost like underground society of young Republicans who supposedly are going after some what we want to call it rotund sex workers that they bring up to a hotel room, and I guess the details are a bit shaky, of course, and so Michael Kelly has to confront him about this, and they have to start talking about the fact check that they go through for these articles. And Joe, it's like it's a razor thin margin that Stephen Glass doesn't get caught early in the process here. I mean, it's like a hairline type of thing.
And it's something where you really have to think that there's no way in the modern era that Stephen Glass gets away with what he does in this movie. Because one thing that I really like that they did in the movie that I don't think many people would either appreciate or care that much about, he actually goes over the editing process for a magazine. And when you're at something like the New Republic, over the fact that it's like there's a first editor, there's a second editor, there's a copy editor, then there's like what was it? There was one more step, then there's the legal team, and all of this is bouncing back and forth between. No, it was like layout. Layout does it, and then it's legal team, and then at all these steps, it's usually bouncing back to the writer to fix, to change, do all these things, and it is an arduous process. And somewhere in there is fact checking, which back then, you're doing this with Alta Vista. You're doing this with Ask Jeeves. You're doing this, like, maybe one guy's using Google at the time in the late 90s, which I don't think it is, because Google's like 2000, 2001. It shows up later in the game.
It's on the other side of the millennium, I think. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so, like, their tools to fact check really fine details mean you have to do really fine work. You have to either directly call a place, ask them their hours, ask them all these fine things, and then, like, you see Hank Azaria even do that, where he's like, hey, like details over the fact that they get called and say, hey, the mini bars don't exist at this hotel. And that's the first detail they gets called on, and like ask him about that. And when he does, he's like, well, no, there must be something wrong. Like, I totally saw it. And he comes back saying, like, oh, like, they rented a mini fridge and it's my fault. I should have checked something. I'll happily resign. He's just trying to overly apologize for the scenario, and then says they must have grabbed them, rented it. And then so Hank Azaria checks and it's like, hey, do you have refrigerators? No. Are rental refrigerators allowed? Yes. Okay, well, there you go. So it must be fine, because how apologetic my young reporter was. So it's one of the way they start layering that character and how he deceives you. Is you think there's no way someone who is this hard on himself and this, like, willing to apologize over and over again can actually be lying, among the other ways that they layer the character. But yeah, so no, it's a lot.
There's other dramas I've seen, and one of them is the TV show Lie to Me, where people will get pressed so that they can like see what their reaction is to information, right? So that you can see, okay, well, that was a genuine reaction. This was you trying to deflect, kind of thing, right? And what ends up happening with Stephen Glass very early on is you get to see what he does when people start to press him for the truth. And to your point, Joe, with this original article that the movie was based on, this Vanity Fair article by H.G. Bissinger was where this idea of "Are you mad at me?" comes from. And so this is what Stephen Glass does when people, come to him and are like going, "Hey, I need to check your facts on this one." He immediately starts to deflect blame from himself, and then starts to, put it towards somebody else to be able to either verify, validate, whatever. And right away, you mentioned it, he says, to Michael Kelly, I'll resign right now if you need me to, right? Because he wants to put the decision on somebody else, to do that. And to the point of what we see from like the post movie information and some of the interviews and things that came out of this, Chuck Lane, who is once again the peer of Stephen Glass, ends up becoming the editor later on for the New Republic. He goes on to further detail, Joe, just how much Stephen Glass continues to use this manipulation tactic of trying to make his decisions be someone else's to try and take credit for. And so when he meets with Michael Kelly about this stuff, it's the first time you get to see that, where it's like, hey, I'm going to be like just flamboyant about how dramatic this stuff is. And you get to see how normal people are like going, no, let's slow this down a little bit,
Yeah.
And that way Stephen Glass can appear like he's being a sincere person, but
yes,
you get to slowly realize how he's not at all.
That is one way that he does this, right? Because, like, clearly, there's a great part in the movie where you've got Sarsgaard talking with Avi, and he breaks it down and says, if Stephen was a stranger to you, and he said what we're trying to investigate right now, or what we're claiming right now, you wouldn't believe it because you're a damn good reporter. And you'd be offended that anyone tried pulling that on you. But because it's him, you're letting it slide. You're letting your guard down, and you can't do that. And when you look at like, well, how does he trick someone? And the reverse Superman of how he can basically convince everyone that he's Clark Kent and not Superman, and he has Lois Lane, who is a Pulitzer Prize winning reporter. How does he do it? I mean, glasses, hypno glasses. Of course, that's how he does it. But how Stephen Glass does it is through basically being overly, like one way is being overly nice to everyone who's there. He kind of has this demeanor of he's kind of shut in. He's a little shy. He doesn't like coming out of his shell, but when he does, he's very entertaining. But when he's talking to you on a daily basis, he's inviting you to just hang out with him and play Monopoly at his place. He's remembering multiple years ago that you didn't like something, so he's going to make sure that when he has a personal occasion with you, that you're getting what you want. Something simple as there's a Diet Coke in the freezer with your name on it because he remembered you wanted it, just got it, and wanted to make sure it was cold for you when you got to his apartment. Or how he's going to compliment you on your looks every single day and and he's going to buy things from the office person who, is the equivalent, which again, I don't know what people are selling at offices anymore. I remember when I first got a job and fucking every other person was selling Scentsy.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I don't know, what about single, just out of college dude says I buy Scentsies, but I'm not going to? Stephen Glass would have bought your whole case.
Or some essential oils. I mean, hey,
Yeah.
whatever is being passed around at that point in time. But
Yep.
But to your point, Joe, I mean, he has this office environment. Everybody's spellbound in there, So you've already called out Caitlin Avey, who's played by Chloe Sevigny. Melanie Linsky plays Amy Brand, who is his other bestie in the office. What's interesting about both these characters is that they actually were created to almost protect the real people that were in these slots in that office. There was something about it that they didn't. There's some of the very rare characters in this movie who don't actually take on the names of the real people they're supposed to be, and so I did years ago. I read about how one of the husbands of who Caitlin was supposed to be, the husband of the real Caitlin character, he said, my wife isn't a blonde, woman. But what I see through the character of Caitlin are the words that she used. It's the sentences she said. It's the truths that she spoke. And so it was very accurate in how they portrayed these characters, but they're just not quite the exact copy of those people. And what I think is one of the more important relationships outside of that, because it's still fairly surface level. He's continually manipulating these people, and one of the few people he can't is Chuck Lane, who, once again, Peter Sarsgaard. I've never seen a bad performance from this gent outside of Green Lantern. We're not talking about that movie.
Yep.
He still did pretty good in that one. But either way, let's keep that trauma in its own corner.
Yep,
But
its way.
The relationship between Chuck Lane and Stephen Glass, it's unspoken, but you can tell he's not in the web. He's not caught up in this Stephen Glass persona, at least in the movie, right? Some of Chuck Lane's actual testimony and some of the things he said afterward, you could clearly tell from what he said that he was one of the people that was not believing this stuff, at least not nearly as much as the other people were. And it really comes through, I think, in the performance of what Sarsgaard's doing, Joe. I mean, what do you think about that dynamic?
No, I think it's perfect because this is one of those cases where, like every movie, like most movies, so clearly have like the villain of a story, and this is one of those rare cases where there's no villain, there's controversy, there's conflict, there's just humans interacting with each other and not getting along, not seeing eye to eye for whatever reason. But in this one, there was a very obvious reason. In that one that I think it's obviously gets exposed later, but even a subtle thing, right? Because you go from the first time you see the group in this movie, where they're together, they're at a table, they're pitching their ideas over, hey, here's a story I'm pursuing. This is the one I think I'm going to write fully and try and get out into the next article. And what Steve classically does throughout the movie is he will make it seem like he's doubting himself. And even
Yeah.
though he just made this outlandish story that everyone going and everyone rolling, and he's just, I don't think I'll pursue it. I probably won't even finish it. And then the next scene you see it out there. Well, every character who is in that movie is buying, who's in that meeting is buying it. And they don't want to follow it up because they're so caught up in the moment. And then you get to Lane. And Lane's like, no, here's what I'm actually trying to do. And he's giving a very, a real scenario that is an actual developing story. It's not necessarily exciting. It's real life. Here's what's going on, and people deserve to know about it, as opposed to wanting to be entertained by what they're reading. And so right there, that's an instant dynamic shift in that you have one who's out to make people happy, and there's one who's actually out there to do his job. And I think that's the kind of the I don't want to say greater commentary. That's the mood for the two characters the rest of the movie. I'm here to do my job, and I'm here to either make people happy or at least make sure they're not mad at me.
As you talked about drama, Joe, and how that tide shifts quite a bit throughout the movie. I mean, obviously, we talked about Michael Kelly. He gets ousted fairly early in the movie because Marty Peretz, who is like this just boss from hell that runs the New Republic, he favors Chuck Lane because I think he just takes a liking to him, whether it's because of his technical nature and just how professional he is, whatever. But Michael Kelly actually ends up losing his job because Marty Peretz was actually a former friend of Al Gore, and so the New Republic was actually posting things that weren't defamatory or anything, but it was against Peretz being like a buddy of Gore. And so either way, once that happens, and once Chuck Lane is in the driver's seat, to your point, when they start going through what the ideas room looks like after Chuck Lane takes over, there's a really specific part where he begins talking about the Hack Heaven piece, which is really the center of where this thing starts to fall apart. And you can see it, Joe, on Chuck Lane's face that he's starting to laugh like he would have in the previous boardroom meetings about this stuff. But there's a very subtle part of it when Stephen Glass says, I'm probably just going to kill this piece. And all of a sudden Chuck Lane goes like this. For those of you that don't see the visual, he kind of just shrugs and goes, and he's like, it's like that's where the little bit of doubt that he might have believed before starts to maybe set fire a little bit more. And I think it's well done to a point where the real Chuck Lane, of course, had to sign off on the depiction. But he claims it worked a little bit faster than that for him. But the way that it's slowly kind of dropped in front of Chuck Lane, who becomes almost like a Sherlock Holmes in a way. He starts to connect this stuff that doesn't quite add up. Joe, I hate to quote the meme, but it's boom, this is some quality cinema we're looking at, Joe. Like pure cinema here.
Yes, absolute cinema. That's what we're seeing right
now. Oh
here.
yeah, absolute. Yes.
Absolute cinema. Which, again, as fans of the movie, I'm not going to say absolute cinema because one, it's all fucking subjective. You can love the things that we love. You can hate the things that we love. You can love it forever. You can love something even more than we do. It's like, hey man, I like it, but I'm not sexually attracted to it like you are. Different spots. But yeah, no, it's again very subtle emotions. Like the quick wait a second, why is this guy wanting to scrap a piece that is clearly this is a room of intelligent people. This is a room of good writers, and we're all loving it. And he's thinking he needs to get rid of it. Why would he do that? He, right there, something small where he starts to pursue it as things kind of unwind, which is now also happening over at Forbes Digital, which this is also at a time where, modern times, print is dead. Circulation for newspapers and magazines is just dying and dying and dying that much more every day, and everything is that people want, even from ones that were mainstays in print are moving online. But back in the 90s, I don't know, even Zoolander poked fun at, hey, I work for the Washington Post online division, and everyone laughs.
Yeah.
So it's even if you have the name, you're working online, funny. So Forbes Digital, does this mean it's Forbes Online, or is this Forbes no, we cover digital shit?
There's one part about this, Joe, that
Mm-hmm.
you have to kind of be listening for. They call it Forbes a lot, right? You hear it
Mm-hmm.
called Forbes, 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 and but when Adam actually leaves a voicemail for Steven, and he clearly ignores the voicemail,
Mm-hmm.
Adam calls it Forbes Digital Tool, which is what they called
Yes.
it back
Mm-hmm.
then. It was not like Forbes Online. It's like it's this really stuffy sounding Forbes Digital Tool,
Mm-hmm.
and like you're kind of like going, yeah, 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 yeah. Wow, like every word you mentioned just gets you that much further away from calling yourself Forbes. Okay,
Yep. Mm-hmm.
but
Yeah.
yeah, that's exactly
Mm-hmm.
why this story feels so much more Adam, or what am I? I'm already forgetting my proverbs here, um, but either way, it feels such like an effort for them to even
Mm-hmm.
potentially consider coming at a larger periodical magazine,
Yeah.
whatever. And
Mm-hmm.
so yeah, you get to feel it like they're like going, did we really just stumble upon this? Like, is this actually
Yeah.
happening to us right now?
Mm-hmm.
And that sense of discovery is really easy to wrap up in. Like I feel like I got sucked into that whole process just as much as they probably did.
Oh, completely. I mean, it's even though like we just made fun of like how an online like anything was perceived back in the late '90s, but even then, like clearly they didn't feel that way because when the editor for the Forbes digital tool is presenting like the article to Pennenberg, he's like, why the hell didn't you do this? Like, this is your thing. Like, one, digital is our realm. We're in the same
Yeah.
like ideas New Republic here is that we're except we're online. This is something that's very much you. Like, you even have connection to this world. How can we even hear about it? And I think Pennenberg probably took that personally back in the '90s. He's like, wait a second, yeah, why didn't I do this? So there's even that idea of like, yeah, this is our turf. So we, even though we are seemingly like just a digital tool, um,
Yeah.
which I will never not laugh at the fact that that's the best they could think of. Oh, it's a digital tool. It's like the person who was still calling an app an application for way too long, or maybe
Yes.
like, oh, how do I run that program on my phone? No,
Yeah.
not programs, sir. They're apps. Yep. Hmm.
I was going to say, to your point, Joe, that is one thing you have to put yourself back into the headspace of, is
Hmm.
remembering what the 90s was like, because part of the fabrications that Stephen Glass was able to push forward through this magazine was reliant upon people not having a large digital footprint back then.
Hmm.
Literally using an AOL membership to
Hmm.
create a false page to align to a company, things that he would continue to do. And there is one detail that I think they did slip on just a little bit. It's not a big deal. But one thing that Chuck Lane mentions, and they show this in the movie, is when he does start to investigate Stephen Glass for the fake phone numbers and all these voicemails and things.
Hmm.
He actually writes down on a note when he hears one of the fake voicemails for the first time that it's a young sounding voice. And I don't buy it at all that that voice sounds young, because it actually sounds like a
Hmm.
middle-aged person on the line. Um,
Yeah.
but later we find out, no, that's actually Steven's brother who's in college.
Hmm.
Excuse me. And when Chuck Lane actually tells this story, because I've watched a few interviews with him, he actually mentions that the voicemail, why it was so striking to him, why he was like believing himself that he was doing the right thing. That voicemail, like Steven's brother sounds almost exactly like him. So when he hears it, he's like going, what is
What?
this?
Hmm.
And so they tweaked it a little bit for this storytelling, but
Hmm.
outside of that, I mean, almost every piece of watching Chuck go through this
Hmm.
and little by little get a piece of the truth. I mean, it's delivered so well and acted
Hmm.
so well by
Yeah.
Sarsgaard that I mean, Joe, I feel things for this performance, man. It's just
Yeah.
it's fabulous.
I think it's everything. I mean, like I will like looking back again, like I feel like a lot of God, like you said, the fact that this was actually a pretty solid like cast, and then you get like two people like Zahn and Dawson who just get really relatively small roles in this movie, but how well they do things. Because even imagining like the sheer joy you would have gotten as Rosario Dawson's character as Fox, literally like trying to, because they he said for the Hack Heaven piece that there were 21 states who were starting to look at like the legislation to prevent prosecution against former hackers who are now working for the industry, and he just has 21 states. Is one, it's one way. It's a good lie. Because one, it's not just a number that people go to right away. It's not a round number. It's not ending in a 5. It's one that makes you think, oh yeah, no one's gonna say fucking 21 states. Who does that? It's not half of it. It's not a nice easy percentage. 21 states. Okay, I believe it right there. And then you've got Fox who says, I checked all 50. And looking at how that had to be done at that time, because this stuff is not sitting in a nice public online file. She was calling state legislators and asking one state after the other, just checking to see if you've got something like by this name or something like the name on the books. Which again, fucking old school kick-ass journalism of literally what the journalism was back then was just calling people on their shit. And how much work were you willing to do to call them on their shit? That's what she was willing to do, to call 50 fucking states and be like, hey, you talking about this? Oh, you're not? Okay, I'll go to the next one. It's fucking great. And then when you see Dawson deliver oh yeah, the 21 states, I just called all 50. It's like she was through the roof when she found out that this guy's full of shit. Which, I mean, how great is that? How great of a feeling would you have as a journalist? You're like, no, this is solid proof that this other guy's full of it.
Yeah, and it's a breakthrough for online journalism, and it's not just the movie making that claim. There's a lot of people who agreed with it. And to be honest with you, Joe, this made me feel really old to even consider this. But I almost wanted to wrap this episode in a way that's treated like an editorial. I didn't prepare anything, so don't worry. I'm not going to go through that. But what I wanted to say about it was that when you have investigative journalism as a source for being entertaining in a movie, we've talked about it a little bit before, that there's a lot of familiar tropes. The reveals seem to be very similar. You don't usually. I would say sometimes these movies can be very boring. There's times where you get kind of to a peak and there's a lull, and with this one, I never truly felt that sense of even having down moments. This is a movie that really applies a sense of entertainment at first, where you're just kind of getting used to these cool characters, they're having a good time. You get really wrapped into it, you're a piece of it. But then there's this complete switch where suddenly you've got anxiety, suddenly you've got this lack of trust, and it feels uncomfortable the longer you watch it. That's something that stayed with me for the decades that followed. Is the longer you watch it, it's I don't feel good about what's going on. I feel dirty.
A little bit. Well, that's the thing, right? Because there's a part of you who's just really wants to see what lie is the one he gets pinned on, right? Which one do they finally catch him with? Because throughout the movie, one, if you know the story, he was, he was making things up. And how bad he's making things up? 27 out of his 41 published works, bullshit to some degree, if not entirely. And you keep seeing him basically backtrack through niceties, or just nope, I'll get you what you need to in a bit. And he always comes back with something. And what he comes back with is always believable at the surface level. And it doesn't matter what it is. Is it a phone number that leads to a voicemail? Is it a website that leads to, an AOL thing, which, by the way, back then, even Lane was I don't know much about what's going on. How is this a fake website? And they just say, well, only AOL members can fucking look at it. Not everyone, which is a huge red flag. But he keeps finding ways to do it until you're yes, they're going to finally get him. Fuck, he dodged it again. Oh, they're going to get him. He dodged it again. But each time that this is happening, it's not the villain got away again and he's off today. You can see he's slowly cracking each time as he's panicking and managing to keep it under the surface enough to keep the lies going until eventually it falls apart. And when it falls apart, it's not an ugly cry fall apart, but it's ugly. You see him shatter, you see him break, you see him grasp at straws to try and keep some aspect of his life or some semblance of what he had alive, and you just see it fail on every level. And watching that happen to someone is very difficult. And at least from a Hollywood standpoint, if you feel like it's difficult to watch because of how bad you feel for the character, that's good work. That's what they wanted you to feel.
And pay attention to Hayden Christensen throughout, because his physical form changes. The longer this stuff goes on, the more lies that pile up. You can see it immediately in his hairstyle, Joe. He's got this, this perfect coif kind of going in the beginning. The longer the movie goes, the more disarray you can see with it. The more
it gets as it goes on. Yeah.
Yeah, there's like flattened
Look, greasy
spots.
sweat. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And like his state of dress starts to adjust, starts to look differently. His eyes noticeably get darker throughout, and so you can start to fully see that it's like, yeah, this hero you were presented in the beginning is now flipping towards Chuck Lane, because Chuck Lane, he's not your hero from minute one, and as it changes over time, I've got to say it leads to a moment that, for me, I know it's not Academy Award winning moment, but when Chuck finally connects it all together and the way that they kind of move some flashbacks into it, it is an excellently written scene, performed, and I've got to say it's a shame that this movie didn't take off, because I think it was well executed beyond many that we've seen.
Completely. Like when you're getting to the end and you have this culmination of the movie and there's a legal proceeding that's happening, there is the the building of the scenes of him talking to the high school classroom and oddly eyeing up one high school girl the entire time.
I didn't feel comfortable.
Very
Didn't feel
weird.
comfortable with that.
Very
Yeah.
weird. Not good. Bad vibe. And then of course, just Chuck's relationship that he's having with, his peers who by and large don't like him. And that is a good deal to do with what Stephen Glass had done throughout the movie. But when you hit that pinnacle where there's an applause happening and it's merging all three of those parts together, it's beautiful. It is great filmmaking. The commentary being made with what we're seeing on screen is just, it's, I don't want to say phenomenal, but like, few people pull that off and have it where you can appreciate what was done, because again, it wraps up the journey well. It's telling you this is the culmination of work we've been trying to put together, that you've been witnessing and we've been making, and it all fits so well without them having to scream a message at your face, without them having to say, "Oh, this is the spark that lights the rebellion." Fucking terrible.
No.
This is it. Like if they don't spell it out, we see it work. We just see it work.
The only thing that they are deliberate about, that they put in your face, is the fact that a lot of this film is in Michael Kelly's memory, because, like I mentioned before, he actually died covering the Iraq War, and so before the movie could even come out, he lost his life, and he was one of the first journalists to die overseas in that. So when you start to think about the overall film and what it's trying to do, it is a love letter to Michael Kelly. And it's not done in a crass way. It's really done in a way that it's almost like a eulogy of sorts for him when he does weave into the story. But Joe, to your point, it is a movie that I hope more people see. As you mentioned, it's on YouTube. Yeah. We'll put the link in the show notes so you can go watch it for free. But yeah, Joe, to your point about closing things up, that's what we have to do now. And with that, we do thank you for listening to the Digital Dissection Podcast. If you like this episode, you can find all of the seasons of the show on YouTube, as well as audio-only versions on your favorite podcasting services.
And your support has gone an incredibly long way, but if you could share or like this content, we greatly appreciate it, as it helps us get noticed across our many platforms. And as always, pop culture nerds, we appreciate you joining us. And until next time, keep on dissecting. And remember, it's not a lie if you believe it.
Wait, are you mad at me?